welcome and thank you for tuning in to the very first episode of my series, Office Hour. My name is Cesar Martinez. I am a history nerd, a researcher, a travel enthusiast, a big foodie, and I've been in the education field for 16 years. Anyway, after leaving public education, I decided to start VC Multimedia. If you want to find out more information about that, please visit vcmultimediaeducation.com, and you can also follow us on Instagram at VC Multimedia for some extra credit material. So, what is the VC Multimedia channel all about? In this series, we're going to review the American history as taught in public schools, but through a non-Eurocentric perspective. Well, think of 1492. When you think of that year, based on what you've learned in school, what comes to mind? 1492. I won't even say the rest because, like I said, non-Eurocentric. Sorry, not sorry. See, when I think about 1492, I think about the Taínos. I think about barbecue, pescado, ceviche. Sorry, when I think about food, I'm telling you, I'm a big foodie. When I think about food, I get distracted. So where were we? Oh yeah, we're gonna cover history that is often overlooked. So just be forewarned, this series is suitable for mature audiences, not for kids, because we're gonna keep it raw, we're gonna keep it real, all right? This is a crucial year that will shift the course of history for Manteo, the Croatan people, and the first European colonizers who attempted to settle Roanoac, Virginia, before they mysteriously vanished. This is the story.
They all moved to the west.
They lived a long time ago.
There were the Navajos.
They hunt for their food.
They lived in teepees. They wear deer skins. They use bows and arrows.
They have feathers.
From experience, people in America, yes, even teachers, they think of Native American societies and how they lived in teepees, huts, bows and arrows, buffaloes, tribal dancings, and really they thought of them as backward, savage people, evident in Disney's movie Pocahontas and the use of that word and whatnot. So let me provide you with this. Examine this engraving from the Secotan village in 1585 by John White, who was hired to be the artist and map maker for this expedition under Richard Grenville, who also happens to be the cousin with Walter Raleigh, who also happens to be BFF with the Queen Elizabeth I. All of this is important because it's all gonna play, it's all gonna come connected down the road. Trust me, I'm gonna come back to this, all right? And he is important, this colonizer is important as well, is because we are gonna read his accounts. And I've read his accounts actually on the first voyages of the Americas and what he sees and what he noticed. And this is where actually this image or this engraving comes from. It comes from that book. All right, check this out. Here's the key to help you distinguish some of the things that I want you to notice. So if we look at E, we have 2 tobacco fields. We also see in letter F, the huts where folks are posted to keep animals and birds away from corn, from the maize, because corn, maize is very important in indigenous history. And if you look at L, probably the most important thing is the river. That's what supplied water to the village. So let's start with the societal structure. The big key thing that I want you to take away from this is that the Secotan power was matrilineal, meaning that it was passed down from the mother. This is an important key because Manteo's mother would have been a Widowanska, which is a female chief. So at the very top, we have the Powhatan or Mamanatoic, which the English translated to high priest or high emperor. Think of the Powhatan as the leader of a nation. Below the Powhatan were the chiefs of each tribe. If you were male, you were Werewants. If you were female, you were a Wirowanska. And there would be about 30 or so of these villages or tribes within this area. And the size of each varied from location to location. You can have a village as small from 5 to 10 families, and you can have a big village that could host up to 100. It all really depends on the available resource and what's happening in the environment at that time.
These tribes belong to 3 different language groups: Algonquian, Iroquoian, and Siouan. The Algonquian-speaking American Indians lived in the coastal plain region, while the Siouan language group tribes lived in the Piedmont area of the land. The Iroquois language tribes lived in the mountain region and the coastal area. We also have evidence from earlier explorers. John White was the official artist of the 1585 Roanoke expedition. His job was to visually record plants and animals unknown to England and to illustrate the daily lives of the American Indians that the Europeans encountered. Thomas Harriot, another expedition member, kept a written record of such discoveries. White's watercolors and Harriot's records are primary sources, materials from people there at the time, that have helped historians learn about the lives of coastal American Indians who lived in North Carolina almost 450 years ago.
Taxes. That's right, something we can't ever escape. Taxes were collected by the chiefs, which then made its way up to the Powhatan. The Powhatan then picked what they wanted, and the rest they were able to use for whatever purposes or projects they had in mind. You can use those extra resources for a lot of things. So people in society were all seen as commoners. However, and if you do look at the English accounts, there are some instances where they talk about the better offs. The better offs, they refer to the people that lived in nicer houses and had extra resources, either because they were able to produce more or because they had a good relationship with the leaders.
Yeah, so what I'm wearing is pretty much common for what you'd see your average Powhatan woman wearing. I'll start off by my dress here. So my dress here is made from deer skin, which is primarily what the Powhatan's clothing would be made from. And they would commonly be wearing aprons like the men would be. You'd see them wearing a one or maybe two shoulder dress for more special occasions, or maybe if it's very cold out. Here I'm wearing some moccasins, which are also made from deer skin, and commonly the Powhatan would not be wearing moccasins in town, only when leaving town. Yeah, so you know, it's really similar to how we like to express ourselves today with different things that we like to wear. Here I have some shells that are embroidered on the bottom and top part of my dress to sort of add like a pop of white. And I'm also wearing some different jewelry to kind of also accentuate what I wear every day. So I also have some different types of bone and animal talons here, beads. Teeth would also be used as well, fangs and claws. These are rattlesnake vertebrae that I actually went with my husband rattlesnake hunting last year, which was very adrenaline pumping and exhilarating. And these are some hawk talons here that I have on this necklace. You can see that there are a couple glass beads. Those would be trade items with the Europeans when they come. Those are more high status items, just like wearing lots of pearls, which I just have a little bit of pearls on my necklace and some pearls on my bracelet, but also copper. So that is the one metal that the Powhatan did have before there were any European arrival. And they saw copper sort of as we see gold today. It's worn by people who are of more higher status. Yeah, so the Powhatan, I guess I'll start off with the paint and dyes and whatnot. The Powhatan, pretty much every color you can think of, they could make from their natural resources and can still be done today. So that would be different plants and their roots, flowers and minerals. This one specifically that I have is a more bright red. We know it as puccoon, and that is a plant root that would be traded for. It's a bit more of a higher status item, but it is also commonly worn by women, so that's why I only have a little bit on my shoulders, and it's very kind of muted. You can still see my tattoos from it. Here I have this sort of drawn on to show that the Powhatan women would be tattooing their face as well. We know that the women would tattoo more so than the men, and the men would be painting more so than the women. You can see the paint sort of as how we pick out different color clothes every day, and we wear clothes to different occasions. So we know that they would often paint black and red. Those were common colors, but they were also painted for warfare. And we know that the women would paint all black for funerals. And then my tattoos, like I said, they're very, very modern versions of what the Powhatan would have been tattooing at that time, which we know were geometrical shapes and patterns, plants, flowers, animals, weapons and such.
So, just like any society, very much similar of at the time. Like, again, hopefully this information allows you to awaken your thoughts and your perceptions of Indigenous peoples before the English came here. So now that we talked about our political leaders, let's move on to our religious leaders. The English classified or identified folks into two types. You were either a priest, which were those that helped connect, cleanse, and energize the soul with the spirit world, and then there were the healers, who focused on healing the spirit in its physical form.
Warfare, dislocation, disease, and absorption by other tribes all contributed to the huge decline in the American Indian population of North Carolina. Disease was an especially extreme killer. No American Indian had ever been exposed to these diseases or developed immunity. Smallpox, measles, influenza, typhus, whooping cough, chickenpox, and scarlet fever were brought to North America by European explorers and colonists. Historians estimate that there were about 100,000 American Indians in North Carolina in 1550, and that by 1800, only 20,000 remained.
Now let's talk about hygiene. As a matter of fact, Indigenous people were very, very clean. One pretty cool and interesting fact is that they would bathe every day when they would wake up, regardless of the season. There are accounts of Powhatan people going out in the winter, making a hole in the ice-covered water. They would jump in and bathe. You know, the Europeans, they were just shocked about it, that they can acclimate so easily to the weather. And you know, as I explain more, maybe we can see why some of these practices, they have those sweating lodges. And sometimes what they would do is that they would go in between the sweating lodge and go into the cold water, like just moving back and forward. And science obviously has taught us today that there's actually some good medical benefits to that. But these folks were doing advanced stuff even back then, before we could even comprehend, right? So that's the beautiful thing. That's what's crazy. This bathing practice was introduced to you as a child as soon as you were born. So regardless of the season, regardless of the time, when a child is born, they were dipped into the water, followed by applying paint to protect the skin of the child. And this is something that, this ritual, this custom, is actually something that you would do throughout your entire life. Talking about bathing, folks did have soap, which most likely would have been made out of yucca or the prickly pear. They also did brush their teeth, and because of their diet being very fiber, it would naturally help clean their teeth. I guess what I'm trying to say is that a lot of the indigenous folks and the Powhatan people in particular, really healthy. If you had to give, like, nowadays this whole healthy movement, man, the Powhatan people and the native folks, they were doing this way long time ago. All right, and if you need further evidence, let's go back even further to 1524. Obviously, the English were not included this in their history books because it involves the French. And if you know your history, the English and the French at this time, kind of no bueno. So let's meet Giovanni Verzano. Yes, it is an Italian name and it is an Italian man, but he sailed on behalf of the French. He is known as the first European to explore the Atlantic coast of North America between Florida and New Brunswick in 1524, 30 years before the English and their Plymouth Rock story. Here is what he writes. They are all well featured in their limbs, on average stature, and commonly somewhat bigger than we, broad-breasted, strong arms, and their legs and other parts of their bodies well-fashioned, and they are disfigured in nothing. That's basically what he's saying about the Powhatan people. He continues on to write, for we saw many of them well-favored, having black and great eyes, with cheerful and steady looks. Not strong of body, yet sharp-witted, we could not learn the details of the life and customs of these people because of the short time we spent on the land, due to the fact that we only had a few men and the ship was anchored on high seas. Not far from these people, we found others on the shore whose ways of life we think is similar. So these are the writings and accounts of Verzano, and just talking about his experience and first encounters with the Powhatan, and then as he moves up further north in his travels, he's going to encounter other folks who are very similar. And just to be clear, this guy ain't no saint. This is the same guy who, in the same voyage, after he left this place, he went up further north and took an indigenous girl captive to take back to France.
At the time, there was no indication to me or anybody else that that was what he was doing.
Anyway, based on my research, I couldn't find more information on what happened to this young girl. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to stop. If I do find some more information, I'll make sure to put an update on the channel or Instagram or somewhere for you all to know. But Verzano's voyages, as well as the actions of other colonizers in Spanish, are all connected. After he takes this young girl, he keeps moving up further north. In his next stop, he meets the Wampanog people. If that name rings a bell, that is the same name, that is the same people that the English will encounter in their fabled story of Plymouth Rock. This is the first time that Verzano breaks his own rule, anchors his boat, and meets the locals on land. And the locals that he meets are the Wampanog. This is what he writes. These people are almost like unto the others, and clad with feather of fowls of diverse colors. They came toward us very cheerfully, making great shouts of admiration, showing us where we might come to land most safely with our boats. So he was pleasant, he was happy, he was able to get off the boat, so he was like excited. But then this bad weather, and then there's the history of just bad weather here. We're gonna talk about that, like with the lost colonies, just like the weather is a big key factor here. But the wind forces them to go back, to return to their ships. They were not happy about it, they were not pleasant. And also the other thing that he wasn't happy about it is that, and in the stories and the accounts, this is what he writes, that the hills are showing minerals, or are showing mineral matters in them. Meaning that, like, when he was in there walking and as they're showing him around, this dude, he's just looking to see what he's gonna take. Just like how he took, remember, just like how he took that young girl in that last stop. This mofo is just out there looking. You know what I'm saying? With that eye, he's just like, what am I gonna take? So Verzano reported that he and his crew were treated well by the natives that they encountered. This is the stories that we have to remember. These are the stories that get sent back to Europe. These are the things that people are reading. People are excited. People want to know what's going on. So we have to know that every word, every account matters because people are soaking it in. We haven't even also discussed the profession that takes a boom, that just explodes in Europe. Folks who are translating material from French, Portuguese, Spanish, English to other, to other languages for people to access this information. And this is what started building this idea of what this new world is like. We have some accounts of people saying the indigenous folks are amazing, they're great people, they're gonna treat you well. And then we also have some other accounts that we're gonna explore and analyze that are just talking negatively, calling them savages, calling them cannibals, just barbaric. And as a matter of fact, Verzano is one of them. He is one of them. And as you look at his voyages and his progression, you're gonna see how things change, and you're gonna see that other events that are happening, how they play into effect here. So let's take a look. Now, before I tell you this story, let me pull up this map again so you can see what the rest of the colonizers are doing or have done before this time period. As you can see, the French colonizers are up north and are venturing Canada and messing that up. And then in 1503, we have the Spanish, Ponce de Leon, already in Hispaniola, messing that place up. Actually, as a matter, he fucked that shit up big time. Let me tell you this one. Let me tell you this one. So we have the French up north fucking shit up, and then we have the Spanish fucking the whole Central America and the Caribbean. 1503, Ponce de Leon arrives in Hispaniola to try to subdue an uprising by the Taínos. Because the Taínos basically were done. They were fed up with all the BS that they were being put through. So what does this Ponce de Leon do? He grabs 300 to 400 men and essentially just tells them, kill everybody. These folks went and slaughtered all the Taínos. Like, it was so brutal that Bartolomé de las Casas wrote these accounts in his book and even tried to tell the Spanish crown. However, already too late, damage was done. Ponce de Leon does kill the last Taíno chief and subdues the entire island. This is pretty fucked up, and it's gonna have a lot of ramifications. May not see it, but it will. But let's go on. So in 1534, it's a little bit further, but I just want to put these into perspective of what's happening. Up north, Jacques Cartier, French, he meets the Iroquois. The Iroquois treated this dude so nicely. Basically, they show him like, hey, here's where you can dock. Let me show you what we have. You know what this dude does? He captures two indigenous men from the tribe, takes them on the boat, and takes them back to France, only to bring them back in the second expedition as hostages so they can show them how to navigate, the area. Kind of messed up. Who's the barbaric one? Just saying. All right, so I cover all this quickly so maybe we can understand why in 1524 the Abenaki reacted the way they reacted towards Verzano. And Verzano goes on to write in his journals, in his voyages, that the Abenaki were so cruel, they're evil, they're barbaric, savages. He just tears on them, just goes into them. And again, words matter. Folks are reading these back in Europe and taking it all in. And the reason why he was displeased with the Abenaki is because when they were trying to get to shore, the Abenaki were just shooting arrows at these mofos like, hey, we don't want you to come. We've heard stories. We know what y'all are up to. We don't want you. Go. Get out of here. He doesn't understand why. Verzano doesn't understand. Like, he's like, I don't know. Why they shooting arrows at me? Right? And that's probably like the worst French accent I've ever done. But like, come on, dude. Like, you don't understand why? Like, for real?
I admit fully that
The other thing that he did not like is the fact that the Abenaki, while they were leaving, I kid you not, I cannot make this up, they basically turned around, showed their ass, and they're just like laughing, like mocking them. Essentially, it's like showing their ass, like essentially saying, kiss my ass and don't come back. That's what they were saying to the French, to Mr. Verzano, and he was just not pleased. As you can see, these people aren't savages. They definitely weren't backwards. And as a matter of fact, what I see sophistication, beauty, structure. I see a lot of things that just shows me that these folks were just doing fine without these European advances. Oh shoot, man, I haven't even finished the entire story. I guess we ran out of time, but please come back for part 2, where I will focus deeper in the life of Manteo, Wanchis, and the lost colony of Roanoke. It's a lot of history, a lot of information, I know. But hang in with me. Hopefully it's fun, entertainment, and hopefully it's a whole bunch of new information that you like and you can do something with it. And if not, it's cool. At least you're walking away with something more so you can know a little bit more history. All right, y'all. Thank you for tuning in, and I will catch you next time.